U.S. intelligence officials say North Korea could launch a short-range missile test or rocket engine test at any moment. They're also watching for a long-range test, which they say is possible but not expected until after the beginning of the new year. Now, Kim Jong-un had promised to deliver what the regime called a Christmas gift if the U.S. failed to restart negotiations to lift sanctions against the country. Pyongyang has conducted a number of ground tests in recent weeks, and new satellite images suggest there have been expansions at a missile production factory. Talks between the two nations stalled back in February during a summit in Hanoi. President Trump had offered to lift all sanctions in exchange for total nuclear disarmament, but he walked away after Kim was unwilling to meet those demands. The recent escalation then comes as newly sworn-in Deputy Secretary of State, that's Stephen Biegun, traveled to China earlier this week. He's trying to prevent a proposal led by Russia and China aimed at easing current sanctions. Gordon Chang is the author of Nuclear Showdown: North Korea Takes on the World. He joins us now from Bedminster, New Jersey, to talk about the implications of all of this. Gordon, it's great to have you with us. I just want to kind of get your headline from this threat. What would be the significance of a long-range missile test, and how much of this is a threat, how much is reality?
Yeah, certainly a long-range missile test would put a hole in President Trump's policies because, as you point out, he has been touting the absence of these tests as proof of success of his diplomacy. Well, the North Koreans did a lot of testing a couple of years ago. They needed time to analyze the results. So the lull was probably a result of their wanting to improve their technology, not because of the success of the president's policies.
And so why then would it publicize a potential additional test of a long-range missile when it's not in line with the negotiations and things they were offering previously?
That's a great question, and I actually think that this smells a little bit of desperation on the part of the North Koreans. I think they think that now's a good time to move because President Trump is weakened politically at home, and they saw that the president accepted what many in the U.S. says is a weak deal on China trade. So they think that they probably have an advantage, but they also need to move because they are being hurt by sanctions.
And what or how could the U.S. intercept or try to prevent a launch test from happening? This is something that did take place during the Obama administration, kind of a middle ground between the sanctions and an actual kind of preventative attack. What are your views on that?
Well, certainly we have the military power to prevent the test by taking out, for instance, the Sohae rocket launch site. But there's no planning for that right now, and that would not be the right thing, because that would make the issue the United States' aggressiveness, as people would say, rather than North Korea's continued violation of UN sanctions and its race to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles and nukes. So there's a lot that we can do to stop the North Korean program by vigorously enforcing sanctions, for instance. But we haven't done that. We've given a lull. We've basically given a sort of a generous period to Kim Jong-un to let him develop his weapons. And now we have to really sort of lose our patience and decide to go back to policies that once made us successful.
And you've mentioned that it's not just U.S. policy toward North Korea, but it's policies toward China, and specifically money laundering through banks. That is another potential opening for U.S. pressure. Connect those dots for us.
Yes. In June of 2017, the Trump administration declared a small Chinese bank to be a money laundering concern under Section 311 of the Patriot Act. That was really a message to the larger Chinese banks, because all four of China's so-called Big Four banks have been handling North Korea's monies in ways that violate U.S. law. We could actually start to fine those banks. Remember, the Obama administration in the 2014-2015 timeframe actually imposed multi-billion-dollar fines on European banks for violating the Iran sanctions, and that did bring Iran to the table. We should be doing the same thing, because right now China is going sideways on us. They want to try to relieve sanctions. They're working to help North Korea undermine our efforts. We need to send Beijing another message, this time more effective, by going after their bigger banks.
So then just assess the state of play right now then. You know, is North Korea moving ahead on developing new weapons? And if so, what does that say about the current sanctions strategy?
Well, they certainly are moving ahead fast because they're improving their missile facilities, for instance, in a number of places. We had the two important rocket engine tests this month. There are so many signs of North Korean progress. And really what we can do is we had a very vigorous sanctions enforcement policy through the middle of May of last year. Then we sort of let up on the gas to create this generous atmosphere where Kim could reciprocate, but Kim has not reciprocated. So we should be going back to cutting off North Korea's flows of money from the outside. And that means not only sanctioning and vigorously enforcing rules against North Korea, but also going after their sponsors, China, Russia, and to a limited extent, South Korea, which wants to get in on the game of helping Kim Jong-un.
And we can't, deny the fact that local politics here in the U.S. are a factor in the president's decision-making. You know, a few years ago when Kim Jong-un was testing missiles, the president threatened fire and fury, of course wanting to appear tough. At this political moment, President Trump was just impeached. They've got the re-election campaign heating up into 2020. How might that play into the White House's response to this current moment?
I actually think that the North Koreans have got this wrong because President Trump's North Korea policy doesn't have too many fans, even among his political base. So if North Korea were to do something especially provocative, like an ICBM test, I think that a robust response from the administration would be politically popular, not just in his base, but across the American political spectrum, because everyone can see that the president's policies just haven't worked. The North Koreans have been taking advantage of the U.S. And so I think that it would actually be not only wise from a policy point of view, but also good from a political point of view for the president to actually start to enforce those sanctions in a way that we haven't seen now for a year and a half.
Right. No U.S. administration has yet been able to solve the North Korean Rubik's Cube. We'll see how the Trump administration does in the weeks and months ahead. Gordon Chang, great to speak with you. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Errol.